when did you realize that you were actually good at writing songs? Or when did you try out writing songs? Do you remember?
I'm hoping that I'll realize that in a few years' time. I've never realized that. I've always thought that I wasn't very good at it. The only thing that gives me any comfort at all is knowing that we have managed to make records before, and so it must be possible. But writing songs isn't like being a carpenter or a builder. If I'd been a carpenter for 40 years, I would know how to do it. I'd be quite certain how to hang a door or make a cupboard. Or if I was a builder, I'd know how to lay bricks by now. But when you write songs, you never feel like you know any more than you knew right at the very beginning. There's no feeling of, oh yeah, I know how to do this, you just do that. And there it is, bam, bam, bam. I could write a pop song, with 4 chords and a catchy chorus, probably without thinking much. But that's not really the area of music we're in. We're in a whole other can of soup to that, and so it's much more involved, and it's much more honest. We're digging about trying to hang truth on 4,000 chords. That's what we're trying to do.
But writing with or for MARILLION is not your first songwriting experience. You've written songs before. I know there were pop songs that you're not too fond of anymore. But what is your first memory, basically? When did you realize, even though you don't want to kind of admit it, I can do this? I mean, people like what I'm doing.
I don't know, and I can barely remember it. I was probably 17 and in a pub band. I used to be in a band that played working men's clubs in the north of England, and we refused to play covers. So we wouldn't play anybody else's songs. And so we used to die on our arse, and no one ever used to invite us back, because they just wanted you to play the hits, and we used to not play the hits. So I guess, we were writing then. So yes, I knew how to write a song then, but when I look back at them, I don't know if they were any good. I mean, most people could write better songs than I was writing when I was 17, I would imagine.
And I think with you, the first thing was the piano, then the singing, then the songwriting, or what is the order of what started to happen when?
Yeah, I was probably, trying to write little songs at the same time as learning to play the piano. When you're young, you're busy pretending to be other people, I think. You have your own heroes, and you try to do stuff like them. So whatever excites you, you try and do similar things. And I guess I was doing that, trying to be John Lennon or Daryl Hall or Peter Gabriel or whoever. Keith Emerson. I was trying to learn all those Keith Emerson piano solos. I spent the whole time I was at college doing that, even though I was supposed to be studying electrical engineering. So I've always tended to want to do the things I'm not supposed to be doing. I think part of the reason I'm a musician is because I was sent to study electrical engineering, and it was my way of rebelling from it. If they'd sent me to study music, I'd have probably been doing electrical engineering out of protest. What was the question? Songwriting. Yeah, I guess I was writing. I mean, It's so hard to separate all of these things. It's like saying to a dancer, when did you start dancing? I said, well, as soon as I could move. I was moving, so I was experimenting how to move. And if you're a dancer, then you would be dancing as soon as you could move, if it was in you. And if you're a musician and it's in you, then I think you're dreaming things up from as soon as you can hear music and be influenced by music. But they tend not to be very good at the beginning. I'd like to think I've got better.
And you just mentioned that you're not too keen on going into the studio and writing. However, is there a big difference in when you're writing for yourself for a solo album or with the guys from Marillion? Is that significantly different?
Yeah, you can please yourself if you're writing solo work. It's about making yourself happy. You still need somebody to occasionally tell you that maybe that's not the best thing you ever did, and you need somebody to criticize what you're doing. When you're working with a band, then you're very, very conscious of the influences and the opinions of the other musicians, because they're all in their own worlds. It took me my whole life really to realize that every human being has their own window on the world, and it's not yours. And I just always assumed it was. I always assumed that what people saw when they looked out through their eyes into the world was what I saw.
And when you write in each of these scenarios, solo or with a band, do you ever think about how it might resonate with the listeners or with other people that are close to you, not necessarily the band members?
Not at all. Don't give a damn about the listeners, to be honest. We've always tried not to think about them whenever we've created anything. Sometimes we've kind of worried. We've thought, oh, I don't know what they're going to make of this. This might be too much. I remember when we were mixing Brave, thinking, well, we've probably shaken most of the fan base off with this album. And I think we did at the time. Now everybody tells us it's a classic. But when we put it out, all you could hear was the sound of people running away, including the record label. But no, we don't really think about that when we're writing. I think that's a dangerous thing to think about, because then you start to try and design what you're doing for the marketplace. And as soon as you do that, you're not an artist anymore. I sometimes worry about what my own family are going to make of some of the things that I've said, because I have said some very raw things and very honest things. And while on the one hand, if I choose to expose myself to the degree that I have sometimes, well, that's my choice. But the problem is that when the people close to you can find that very uncomfortable. So I've worried about that with some of my lyrics, but I don't worry about the listeners in general. We just, cross our fingers and hope to God they like it. But there's no point worrying about them.
Some of the lyrics, some of the topics are quite gloomy and dark, melancholic. You, on the other hand, seem to be quite a humorous person. I read somewhere, I think not too long ago, that you said you write best when you're upset.
Yeah, I mean, most of what I've written over the years has been written either out of a sense of injustice, either personal or political or social. but not, not entirely. I guess I write about the things that hurt me, on whatever level, or that I empathise, that I see hurting other people. That has been a source of inspiration. I'm only saying this because I'm thinking about it now. It's not something I feel the need to have to do, but it is what I seem to have done. I've written a lot about, social injustice, about, I wrote about Tiananmen Square as it happened in '89. I've written about Gaza. I've done music for street kids in South America. So there, Easter, of course, which was about the Troubles in Ireland. So I guess I've written quite a lot about people in the world waging war with each other, and tried to be a voice of reason. I wrote a song about the Estonia sinking, but only because I met a guy on a plane who'd been on it. He'd been on the ship and he'd been in the water for 5 hours, and he told me all about exactly what happened. I've had some very curious chance encounters. I wrote about Donald Campbell losing his life. He was he held the world water speed record back in the 60s. He was a great English hero, and he lost his life when he was doing 300 miles an hour. What's that? 380 kilometers an hour on water. And this thing flipped on its back and he lost his life. And I wrote a song about it. And I ended up singing it at his funeral because his body was in the lake for 40 years. And then eventually a guy went out there and found this, well, it was a kind of a boat, but it was like a rocket boat. And the reason he went looking for it was because he heard the song that we'd written. So he inspired the search for this guy's body, and then they found it and they brought it out of the lake. And then his daughter called me one day and asked me if I'd sing it at his funeral. So I've had strange things happen to me, strange consequences of just writing a few words about something I saw on the news when I was a kid, because when he crashed his machine, it was on the news, and my mother was in tears, and I was only a kid. I was thinking, what's the matter with my mum? Why is she upset? And so this is how it came out in a song all of those years later. I think the songs are probably quite doomy. I'm not a doomy person, but I am complicated.
Complicated. But so what you're saying is it's more of an inspiration. You don't need music as an outlet. Like some people say, I need this to kind of compensate. That's not you.
I don't know. I think there is an element of catharsis in a lot of stuff I've written. I've written about being severely upset. I've written about unrequited love. So it can be a way of putting a Band-Aid over yourself a little bit to write a song if you're wounded. I wrote a song called The Wound. I've done everything I can to heal this wound. So I've written a lot of love songs and I've written metaphors for love songs as well. Because at the end of the day, all we've got is love and fear. And everything either comes from love or it comes from fear. And so I think all of art, you could argue, either comes from love or it comes from fear. And it comes as metaphors for those things. And just about everything we do comes from those two impulses. All the aggression and all the war comes from fear. All the good stuff comes from love.
Speaking of fear, you said before that when you do these solo shows, they're kind of scary for you. Is it important to sometimes leave that, I'm going to call it comfort zone of Marillion to just, I don't know, readjust the senses or whatever?
Well, I think what I'm trying to escape is when you're in a band that plays a lot of music that relies on a lot of programming. In fact, when you're in a band anyway, because there's more than one brain in steering the ship. In fact, that's not even the right way of putting it. What I mean is, when you're collaborating in real time with people, there's a limit to how many changes of direction you can make because they don't know you're going to do it. Unless you're playing Indian music, you're playing rags or something, and you go into a new rag, and all the other guys go, "What's happened? Oh, I know he's gone there. Right, I'm there. And so you always need structure, even in things that seem spontaneous, if there's a number of people. But as a solo artist, you can escape that and be completely spontaneous. And you can stop a song in the middle if you want. Upsets the crowd a bit, but you can do it. And I did it last night, but only because I'd forgotten the rest of it. So you've got the opportunity to place yourself deliberately in the now, in a place where it can go anywhere. And the next song that you're going to sing, you don't actually know yet. You're going to read the room, or you're going to talk to people, or you're going to listen to what people are saying, and that might determine where you go next. And that's a really free feeling, and that's what I miss in the band. We write a set list at the sound checks, and that's what we play. And the songs are kind of gonna be the same every night. Sometimes they just feel a bit better than other nights. We'll have a great gig. But the actual building blocks are the same things from moment to moment. Whereas with a solo show, you're balancing on the head of a pin, really. It's like that. You can fall off in any direction. But when it's right, and you can hold it there, you can never hold it there for long, but when it's just right, and the feeling's there, and when I'm singing really well, and I feel like I've nailed the essence of the words that I'm singing, and I haven't fucked up any of the piano chords, then it's truly exquisite. It can be, but it's only a matter of time before I fall off.
So you really do choose while you're at it. Like basically the moment you start the songs, that's when you have decided you're going to play this song.
Yep.
That's amazing. I think that's a very rare thing.
It is, and I take requests as well. People shout for a song, I'll have a go at it. Sometimes even if I don't know quite how to do it, I'll risk getting it wrong in the middle.
Tell me, what do you feel when you're on stage, and what makes a gig for you successful, aside from the audience maybe being happy?
Just getting it right makes it successful for me. And some nights everything just flows, and other nights it doesn't to the same degree, and then some nights it does and it doesn't. And you have to try and get through those moments when it's just not flowing. It's like the World Cup, you got to get through those awkward moments when the passes don't connect. What makes a great show for me is if I feel like I've not dropped too many clangers on the piano, because there's got to be 4,000 chords in these shows, and they have to be in the right order. and because I'm so consumed by the words, it's easy to lose the chords. It helps if the chords are kind of in the muscle memory to some degree, but because I play so many random things, that's not really possible either. So it's always a little bit of a trade-off between not just doing the same thing night after night, but being able to really be in a zone with it. So if I can stay in the zone for the longest time possible, then that's my idea of a good show.
What does music mean to you?
That's such a small question, isn't it? And I guess the answer's huge in a way. Probably more than I think, because it's been inside me for so long, and I've been a professional musician now for, God, I don't know, 40 years. And so it's completely core and fundamental to me, on the one hand. On the other hand, I feel sometimes like I'm trying to escape it, because when you become a professional artist, you suddenly have to do it. It's different to being an amateur where you do it because you want to. When you're a pro, you have to do it. So you have to make another record, and you don't really want to a lot of the time. I write all the words, and so the prospect of each new record we make together is always terrifying, and I'm reluctant to go there. But when I was a kid, my mum used to play. My dad was in the Navy. He was in the Merchant Navy. So being here in Hamburg is I always feel a little affinity, you know, for this port and how vast it is, and to watch it work down on the Elbe is always romantic for me because of my dad, really. But because he was away in the Navy, my mum used to listen to the radio all day long because I guess she was lonely. And so from an early age, music was coming into my ears all day long. And I could hear the notes in the chords, and I still can. You know, when I hear music, I can hear what the chords are. And so I never had much trouble. Once I learned to play the piano, which wasn't until I was 17, and I only learned the piano because I went to see Deep Purple at Sheffield City Hall and decided that that was the best thing on earth and nothing could be more fun, so I shouldn't waste my life doing anything else. So then I went home and sort of nagged at my parents till they got hold of an old piano for me. And then I worked out how to play it. And I never really had much difficulty learning songs. You know, if I could hear them, then I could play them, I could find my way into them. And I'm still like that. So you've either got that or you haven't. Some people can do it and some can't, and I was born with that for whatever reason. So I've always been musical. I never had any lessons of any kind. I always just worked it out for myself. And it's quite interesting now because I've started collaborating with classical musicians over the last few years. And so I'm coming at music from a completely different end of the spectrum to them. You know, they've studied music, they've learned all the dots and lines. And I'm coming from that instinctive place. And so I envy them, the fact that for me they feel like proper musicians, because, you know, they play in concert halls, whereas I feel like a slight charlatan because I've only ever just worked it out for myself. But I think they envy me a little bit as well, because I don't need the dots and lines, you know. And I was always reluctant to study music in case it prevented me being me. you know, I think there's a danger of losing your originality if you study a subject too much. But music's always been there, and you know, the best Christmas present I ever got was a record player for Christmas when I was 7 years old, and I got a little record player, and She Loves You by the Beatles and Can't Buy Me Love, and It's Not Unusual by Tom Jones, and Tired of Waiting for You by the Kinks, and Not Fade Away by the Rolling Stones, and they were my 5 records that I played to death. And then I became like everybody else, I guess, of my age and generation who were remotely interested in music or teen culture. We all became Beatlemaniacs, and we were just mad about the Beatles because that was what was happening in the mid-'60s when I was about 10. And so I made that journey with the Beatles from their early unsophisticated raw days right through to their, you know, them practically inventing psychedelia and Sgt. Pepper, and then inventing progressive rock music on side 2 of Abbey Road as well. The Beatles sort of invented all of it, and then everybody else ran with it, you know, and tried to do different things with it. So yeah, music sort of, it's something that's there all the time, but I'm often trying to escape from it.
And that's quite an interesting point that you said when you're a professional musician, that you try to get away from it. But you seem to always have done music on your own terms. Does it feel like a job to you when you go on tour with MARILLION, or when you do your own age thing? Does it really feel like a job?
No, not at all. It feels bizarre, to be honest. Even after all of these years, it feels slightly bizarre. The eccentric aspect of my work, I've never really quite perfectly got used to. But I love it. I love touring. I look forward to every show. The solo shows scare me much more than the shows with the band. I'm much more frightened in front of 400 people on my own than I am in front of 4,000 with MARILLION. That's a piece of cake, because all I've got to do is really go and sing, and we've usually rehearsed a lot and we all know what we're doing. But for the solo shows, I kind of deliberately design them so that I don't know what I'm doing. That's part of the experiment. But it's very scary to go on stage not being sure of yourself. So the solo ones scare me a bit. But I still look forward to I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. The writing, I'm not in such a hurry to do. You know, when we come to write each new album, it's always a massive burden for me because I write all the words. My words are all true things. And I've written, 20 albums now. And so you have to dig a little bit deeper every time into areas of yourself that you just as soon not go. And just the responsibility to try and make a better record than the one before, after you've made so many and you did that each time, you get to a point where you just don't know how you're going to follow the last one. And so the prospect of writing is terrifying, and I'm in no hurry to do it. I have to be dragged into the studio to do that. But the gigs I love, really love it.
Thank you. All the best for tonight, and good luck.
Thank you.